Welcome to Intuitive Transformations with your host, Sylvia Henderson, and discover tools, wisdom, and inspiration that will empower you to transform your life. Sylvia is an intuitive life coach and energy healer with a growing practice that is focused on empowering others to be more of who they want to be. For the next hour, join Sylvia and explore and unravel anything in the way of you creating the life that you would love to live on the OMTimes radio network.
Well, hello and welcome. Excuse me, I have a little frog in my voice. To the Intuitive Transformations radio show, where you will find tools that you can use to change and transform your life every Thursday afternoon at 2 p.m. Eastern, right here on the OMTimes radio network, the voice of consciousness at OMTimes.com. I am Sylvia Henderson, your host, and if you would like to learn more about me and the healing work that I do, then please be sure to visit my website at intuitivetransformations.net. That's intuitivetransformations.net. And if you sign up to join my email group, I have a very special gift just for you, which is a 20-minute healing audio meditation that allows you to release fear, anxiety, and worry. These are the three meanies, the things we don't want to carry into our future. And it allows you to release them really almost effortlessly. So you'll find this healing audio to be especially beneficial during times of uncertainty and whenever you encounter unexpected changes in your personal life, as we all continue to participate in humanity's journey of awakening into the oneness of all that is. I encourage you to take advantage of this free healing audio and know that you can use it as often as you like. And trust me, I think it's going to come in handy as we move forward, because we're in a brand new calendar year. And 2017 is a significant year because it is the beginning of a brand new 9-year cycle. 2016 was a 9-year. And what I mean by that is when you add the numbers 2 plus 0 plus 1 and 6 together, those numbers all equal the number 9. And in numerology, 9 is all about endings and also about exposure of what needs to be healed from a heart level, or rather from a humanitarian level. And as you know, in 2016, we saw a lot of people, a lot of endings, a lot of people transition out of physical form, and a lot of issues that were previously hidden were exposed because they are in great need of being healed and resolved. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details of what happened last year, because many of you are aware that 2016 was quite the roller coaster ride for all of us. Well, in 2017, we're entering into a 1 year, which is all about new beginnings. So when you add the numbers 2 plus 0 plus 1 and 7, that equals the number 10. And in numerology, you always reduce any numbers that are more than a single digit. So you would reduce the number 10 by adding the numbers 1 and 0 together, which then equal the number 1, which is why I said this is a 1 year. So what does this mean? Well, it means that we actually get to build a new foundation for our future, and we need to take a look at the ingredients that we were left with at the end of the last 9-year cycle, which was just last year, and then we begin to choose what we wish to experience as we move forward into our next 9 years. So as a 1 year, this is a wonderful opportunity for all of us to manifest what we really want to experience, because the 1 is also about the self-expression, what each of us on an individual basis would like to experience in our lives. And the energetic vibration of the number 1 is very potent and powerful to give us that momentum and that ability to do just that. However, the key to remember is that whatever you focus upon actually expands. This is a universal law. So if you choose to focus on fear, well, you're going to manifest more evidence of fear in your life, or more reasons to fall into that vibration of fear. But if you choose to focus on love and on compassion, then you will manifest the evidence of love and compassion in your life in a very real, tangible way. So the key thing to remember for this year, 2017, is to remove your focus from what you do not wish to experience, and instead become very focused upon what you actually would like to experience. If you do this, and if you come from a heart-centered space of love and compassion, guess what? You will create, moment by moment, a life that you will truly enjoy living. And by doing that, you will also have a positive impact upon all of humanity and the world, because we are all energetically connected. So in this space and time of humankind's existence, the awareness of how the consciousness of all humanity is tangibly and intrinsically linked together really surrounds us. And what I mean by that is that we are experiencing in our World Wide Web, which is what that www stands for in front of a website, World Wide Web of interlinked internet connections in such. It's such a potent metaphor for the truth that we are all spiritually and energetically linked together to the collective consciousness of each other and to the one mind of all that is. So just like our Wi-Fi system connects us around the globe, this is really just a physical evidence of what we as spiritual beings having a human experience are capable of doing. And this is one of the reasons that we can manifest the evidence of our thoughts, feelings, and emotions at an increased rate as we move forward in time, because our conscious mind now really understands the concept of connectivity and how it can happen at the speed of light in a very real and tangible way, as evidenced by how technology has been so prevalent in our lives. However, there's a little bit of a shady side to that, a shadow aspect. And we're going to jump into that in just a moment, because I have a really remarkable guest to share with you today. Today's show is really timely because my guest and I are going to talk about technology and how we have become overly attached to our computers and our handheld devices and our smartphones to such a degree that our technology has fast become the newest and fastest growing addiction within our society today. Nancy Colier is joining me, and Nancy is a psychotherapist. She's an interfaith minister. She's an author and a veteran meditator, and she's going to share how we can use our virtual connection with the world around us consciously and mindfully, and enjoy a much healthier relationship with our computers and our smartphones and our handheld devices. She's also the author of Inviting a Monkey to Tea. I love that title. Befriending Your Mind and Discovering Lasting Contentment. And her newest book, The Power of Off, the mindful way to stay sane in a virtual world. Nancy Colier lives in New York City and is a regular contributor to Psychology Today and the Huffington Post. Nancy Colier, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
I am really glad to have you here because we need technology, but we need to understand how to use it versus having it use us or consume our lives. So I'm really excited to have you share with those who are listening to the show your point of view of what's going on with our addiction to technology, and because it's everywhere. I live in Silicon Valley 2.0 is what I like to call it, because I'm right outside of Redmond, which is home to Microsoft, and we've got Google up here now, and we've got Amazon is up here, and we've got Facebook is even moving up here. I mean, we really are growing in technology where I live here in the Northwest, and I'm a former Microsoft employee, and many of my friends are either still working there or have worked there before. So I was kind of a co-creator in how technology has progressed, but had no idea at the time how it would be such an integral part of our lives. So one of the things I notice where it's not so great, Nancy, is out there in the world today where everyone has their device right in front of them, even school children getting off of buses. The first thing they do is they whip out their phone if they didn't even bother to put it away. So what's going on with this?
What's going on? That's such a good question. And it's a good question to say calmly, not to pull your hair out while you say it. Essentially, we're addicted. If we really boil it down, we have a cultural addiction. And this one, technology, has all the markers of every other addiction. We're giving up activities that used to nourish us in favor of our substance. When we can't use, we're agitated, we're depressed, we're frantic. Have you ever seen somebody that left their phone at home? They look like somebody running around, who needs an EpiPen. They're in a state of shock. We are lying and hiding our use. I cannot tell you how many people I know who run into the bathroom stalls to check their phones. Our use is going up. We continue using even though we know that it's having a negative effect on relationship, on sleep, on health, on, our involvement in the world. All of these are the real markers of addiction.
Yeah,
that's what's going on.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. So we're going into a break. When we return, we'll talk more about our addiction to our digital technology. We'll be back in just a moment.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Hello, I'm Miriam Knight of New Consciousness Review, inviting you to my new show where I interview the rising stars of the conscious awakening. We'll explore the many faces of consciousness in action and intriguing perspectives on life, the universe, and everything in between. Join us each Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on the Rising Stars Show.
When I was little, I didn't talk for a long time. I was sensitive to lights and sounds, so I built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. Sometimes I did the same things over and over, until one day I found out I had autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I learned how to live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
We are back, and this is Sylvia Henderson on the Intuitive Transformations radio show with Nancy Colier. And Nancy, before we went to the break, you were just sharing about how our attachment to our devices has all the markers of what we traditionally consider to be an addiction, like sex or drugs or alcohol. We're frantic when we leave our cell phones behind. And so I'm just curious, are we getting high? So is there something in our brain that lights up that gives us this sense of, I need to get more?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What's happening is that dopamine, our friend and one of our favorite chemicals, is being released when we use social media, when we use our smartphone. We're getting a little hit in the reward center of our brain, our reptilian kind of brain, and we're getting a hit. So there's a reason that, all of us are kind of falling prey to this. There's something incredibly seductive to it. And for our children who don't yet, listen, they can't drink yet, they can't do any of the things, that they're too young to do, but they can do this. And that's why they are really falling prey to this addiction, because they don't have yet a developed higher self, a more evolved self that can say, hey, maybe I don't need that, fifth bowl of ice cream, or maybe when I'm at the cruise ship buffet, I don't need to, have a 34th plate. They don't have that built in yet. So we're breeding addicts. And really, Sylvia, the only difference between this addiction and any other addiction is, essentially two things. One is that in any other addiction, eventually, we're going to end up outside society. Someone is going to bring it to someone's attention, and we're not going to be able to live in regular society. We're going to have to go to rehab. We're going to have to address it. Even if we're just working too much, our spouse will eventually bring that to our attention and so on. But in this one, if you're getting off technology, who are you going to hang out with? You can't not go to the bar. This is a bit more like an eating disorder than it is a drug problem, because it's part of our life now. Even the caves have Wi-Fi. There's nowhere to go. So we've got to find a way to find freedom in technology, not from technology. The other difference in this addiction, right, is that, and this is a very similar one, but just put succinctly, is we've all drunk the Kool-Aid. We've all convinced ourselves that this is okay, what we're doing. And we have all sorts of, just like any addiction, we have all sorts of justifications. Oh, the amount of information and learning we can do, the connectedness, it allows us to talk to everybody every minute, how much entertainment we can experience, how easy it makes life, and so on. Well, that may all be true, but it's the way we're using it. It's not the technology itself that's the problem. It's the way we're using it. Our reptilian brain is using it. And that's taking us, just like any other addiction, that's taking us to a place of increased depression. It's taking us to a feeling of what I call being twired, simultaneously tired and wired. We're exhausted, but we're also kind of amped up and always uber available, and always what else is coming in. But at the same time, we're fundamentally drained. We need rest. It's not just our devices that are never off. It's us that are never off. So this addiction is leading us to where all addictions eventually lead, that life gets smaller and smaller, even though the illusion is that it's getting global and it's getting so big, but our personal experience is getting smaller and smaller, and also a decreased ability to feel meaning and joy in our own lives. That I'm really seeing as I interview many, many, many people, and that is a result of addiction.
Wow, that's really kind of frightening when you say it's a decreased ability to feel joy, that's what gets you up in the morning for life. That's what allows you to move through life. And, without that, that's really fascinating, because, too, when you think about how many commercials there are these days for sleep aids, and with you saying that we're both exhausted, but we're also amped up, which is why I think a lot of people have a problem falling asleep and staying asleep. I used to think it had to do with age, but it sounds like it's because we've got our brain firing constantly, nonstop, with the images and the that constant connection with technology. Wow. So,
and
go ahead.
No, I was going to say another element that is adding to our decreased experience of joy is that there is a new generation, and I would say it's not just the millennials, it's really all of us, that are coming to expect immediate gratification, immediate everything. We want a product. Amazon's got it here in the morning, if not before. We want to watch a particular show. We don't have to wait for, nonsense like when it would play. We want a social life, in in 5 minutes we've got 15 dates lined up with just a swipe right. We want a new friend. We go on social media where we have a new friend. All of these things, we want to be famous. We create a 6-second Vine video that goes viral. We're famous. There is this increasing sense that we're supposed to get what we want. We're supposed to get it now. And with that everything should be easy, right? There should be no hard work in life. If there's hard work, there's a problem. Technology is intensifying a belief in us that everything should be possible, and possible with very little effort. But it turns out that in the human psyche, what creates satisfaction and what creates joy and what creates a sense of meaning in life is time spent on something, mastering it, and hard work. And these two, time and effort, are what we're kind of siphoning out of our experience as if those are to be avoided, the very things that create a life of meaning. So you have a lot of kids now, teens, 20s, 30s, who have this experience of emptiness. They have it's a fun life. They've got a lot of, things going on, but there's a lacking sense of deeper meaning because everything is available in a minute. So they don't have the experience of building a true sense of self-worth, which comes through hard work.
Yeah. And, that is so true. I even think about the fact now that children, when they have, something they compete in, like softball, everybody gets a trophy. So it devalues your effort and eliminates that sense of self-achievement, which is how we create our identity of our own self-value and self-worth, which is so important in the world.
Absolutely.
Absolutely some of the things.
True. And I was just going to say one other thing on that, which is that also, in this process of technology becoming such a central part of our lives, what's happening is that our relationship with our own self is changing profoundly. So that, it used to be that we experienced ourselves as a kind of destination. More people did. They if something happened to you on the street, you had a nice moment with someone, you'd walk on the street for a little bit, just sort of processing that with yourself. You wouldn't text it out. No one would even know about it, probably, ever. But now, the minute something happens to us, we're right out there, hashtag nice moment, kicking it with kindness, whatever nonsense we're captioning the moment with. And then we wait to see what the public says about our own experience. And we are experiencing ourselves more and more as a kind of vacuum, as a place that, as my clients describe, at the end of the day, when the devices go off, if they go off, there's a kind of dread, a kind of terror, like, oh, God, it's just me here. Oh, now what? I can't be with me, as if it's an empty vesicle. And as you know, in every psychological, spiritual, philosophical tradition, eventually we are pointed back to ourselves as our own refuge. We are pointed back that we are the thing, we are the entity we are searching for. And this relationship with technology is generating a sense of just the opposite. There's nothing here. This is nothing unless it's filled.
And the other thing is there's so much responsibility put on the other to give you your own validation, which that's such a fleeting, there's no stability in that.
That's right.
It's changes day to day how someone feels, whether or not they like you or not. It's kind of interesting because I've gone to parties or events and I run into people that are on my Facebook page and they'll say, oh gosh, I just love all your posts. And I'll be honest, but they haven't liked it. So I'm like, I didn't think anybody was reading my posts sometimes. But it really is, it's funny. If you're really dependent upon how many likes you're getting for a post, if your self-esteem is tied to that, that is so damaging to your psyche.
It's a disaster.
Oh, my gosh, your whole world falls apart.
you would not even believe the young folks in my practice, and also I have young kids, I have teenagers, and they're moment to moment, Sylvia, they can feel wonderful about themselves or like they are of absolutely no value. And even the worst assault is if they Snapchat someone and it goes unopened. The despair that goes into not even worth opening, wow, or the way we use not opening the Snapchat as a weapon. And it's sort of paradoxical if you really look at it, because on the one hand, we're experiencing a time where we have this raging kind of narcissism going on. Millennials particularly accused of being incredibly entitled, incredibly self-important, and with this sense that, every pumpkin latte they drink is of profound interest to the world. And that whole sense that, every meal I eat is interesting to others. And yet at the same time, as you're saying very insightfully, it's all externally motivated. So if the likes don't come in about the pumpkin latte, they are stripped down back to nothing. And that speaks to what we were talking before, which is when we're not working hard at our own pursuits, when we're not having a relationship with ourselves, where we are in a relationship actually with an entity, a self, we don't have any ground to stand on. We don't have anything from which to build a sense of self-esteem.
That is so, so true. I mean, it's fascinating because I did not know how deep down the rabbit hole this actually went. But to hear you talk, it's quite frightening that we have entire generations being programmed to believe that there's no way you can know your own value unless someone tells you what your value is. And that, to me, over time is really kind of scary, to be quite honest. And I know we're going to go into a break in just a minute, but when we come back, I do want to talk about, that we don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater, of course. We're going to learn how to use technology from a conscious point of view, but I also want to talk about, when we get back, some of the more extreme representations of how technology can consume someone to such a degree that they're willing to wear an adult diaper so they don't have to step away from their technology. When we return after the break, we'll talk a little bit about that. More with Nancy Colier on Intuitive Transformations Radio on OMTimes.com.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Hey, let me ask you something. Would you seat your 3-year-old child on a windowsill? Would you seat them beside a lit fireplace or by the deep end of a pool? One last question. Would you seat your child in a car seat that's not correct for them? Car crashes are a leading killer of children ages 1 to 13. Secure their future. Seat them in the correct car seat. For more information, visit safercar.gov/the right seat. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
We are back. Nancy, before we went to the break, I asked you, I told everyone we were going to talk a little bit about how far this addiction can really take someone. For instance, is it true that in China that there are adults who are so addicted to their computer screens that they actually wear diapers so they don't have to leave their technology in order to relieve themselves?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
yes, it is.
This is a real thing.
This is the real thing, Sylvia. You know, as we're going under, it's kind of like going under anesthesia. We're still at a, I really believe this, we are still at a place where we can wrestle back a healthy relationship with technology. And why I'm really optimistic is because some of the mythology about the way technology has been sold to us and the stories we've been selling ourselves, you know, that it makes life feel much more connected. Well, truth is that we're finding studies now that the more people use social media, the more lonely they feel. The myth that it makes life easier. More and more people are starting to wake up and say, well, wait a minute, I spend so much time managing my technology when it breaks or figuring out the new technologies, all of this sort of stuff. Does it really make life easier? You know, when it takes me 15 minutes to get a scheduling thing into my notes section that I could write down in my Filofax in 3 seconds, does it really make things easier? And all these myths that we've told ourselves, they're starting to crumble. And enough people are starting to say, hey, my friend, when we're together, I don't want you taking texts. Don't put your phone on the table. It's becoming kind of hip now, if you will, to digitally detox. You know, all of these, for example, the whole vacation industry has now been developed about getting off the grid. People are starting to recognize, you know, we went full on drinking the Kool-Aid for the last decade, let's say. And now people are starting to wake up and say, how's this working for me? How's this really making me feel? And that's why I wrote this book. I wrote this book because I was seeing a lot of that starting to happen, that what we really need, what really nourishes us, what really brings us a sense of meaning and value in our lives is not technology and may be at odds with the way we're relating to technology. So people are really asking this question, you know, is this how I want to live my life, this existence? And so there's a lot of hope around the crumbling of these myths. And one other thing that I would say that I just wanted to point out is that we talk a lot about mindfulness in this culture, and yet the very way we're using technology is the antithesis of mindfulness. Mm-hmm. So we are, you know, walking on that country road, and instead of feeling the breeze or directly experiencing the steps or taking in the sights, we're looking for a place to take a selfie of ourselves so that we can say, oh, check me out, you know, I'm a person who takes country walks. We're using life to build our brand, which means we're not actually living life directly. And if we're not using it to say who we are, to constantly announce our identity, we're looking for places, you know, to capture life. I'm at my kid's dance recital. I have to take 1,000 pictures so that later I have that experience, you know, in my iPhoto file. Again, the cost of that is the direct experience of life, which, you know, if we really live that dance recital, if we really are there for it, that experience is integrated and absorbed in us and changes us in a way that looking at it later or showing our friends can never do. So more and more people are actually talking about how they're not willing to give up direct experience, the living, the mindful presence in their own life, to have a life to show.
And this is so incredibly critical because I think one of the things that feeds into this addiction is really that so many people don't know who they are authentically. They know that they are a mom, or they know that they're a dad or a sister or a brother or an employee or an employer, but we have forgotten as a whole on a societal level to really identify with who we are and take a moment to check in with that. And instead we have, addictions have been around for a long time for part of that reason. It's a great way to distract you from being in the present moment. I think the thing I'm most concerned about that's coming down, that's going to be really big in the future, is virtual reality technology. Because as someone who meditates, someone who takes some time to focus within, I feel as if virtual reality is trying to become a technological replacement for that, because it's so consuming with people's senses, and now they're allowing vibrational things to happen when you're watching it, as well as the sound. So have you, how do we how do we take care of ourselves, Nancy? Help us here.
Right. Well, I'm a big believer in the revolution starts here. The revolution starts with me, right? So I think what you said to start is really profoundly important, which is that we have to come back to, or create, if it hasn't been created yet, to some connection with a self that is not one of my roles, right? So what's here, essentially, that doesn't come and go? Well, that's the felt sense of just who I am, the being, the living, the whatever you want to call that, because everything else, every other role, I call them hats that we wear, they're all changed. And so we come back, if we're interested in kind of finding something more lasting, a sense of peace that's more lasting. It's not in the next app. It's not even in an app that, says we'll create peace. It's not in the next job promotion. It's not in anything we can gain, we can lose. And so we develop an interest, if we really want abiding peace, in finding some way back to a self that is more lasting. And I agree with you that, these virtual realities right now feel like they will be very seductive, and as we harm the planet more and more, we slip away into a made-up reality, as our own reality becomes more frightening in that sense. But when I say the revolution starts here, it's because in this moment, I have so many choices. I can choose, if I'm waiting in a line, I can choose to just be with myself. I can actually, if I have the impulse to use, I can say, hey, I don't have to follow that impulse. I can say, what would I have to feel here if I didn't use? Or what's here that I'm trying to distract myself away from? I can use the impulse to be an addict as an opportunity to actually wake up, just the opposite of the way we've been using it. So many people say, oh, it's too late, we're down the rabbit hole. But this moment is just this moment. How are we going to be in relationship with distraction and with non-reality, with whatever we're describing right now? How do we want to be in relationship? If I'm having a conversation with a shopkeeper, I have a choice right in that moment to be there, to be present, to not be on 9 devices at the same time. So that, to me, there's only this moment. That's incredibly exciting.
I agree with you. But for someone who is already kind of going down that path, I like how you talk about questions like, how do I want to be in this moment? And why do I feel compelled to want to reach for my device? And really asking the consciousness within you to illuminate what's really, we're trying to fill this void, which goes back to, I want to feel valued. And really that doesn't come from anything outside of yourself, because that's so transitory. It changes from moment to moment. If you don't really develop that relationship within yourself and know who you are, you will depend on something outside of yourself to define you. Sorry. So one of the things that I really appreciate in your book is you also have some really great practices within your books. You also have a 30-day detox that people can follow. But one of the first things you talk about is the breath. And so why is taking a breath, why is the breath such an important component for allowing you to stay conscious and aware and to really know you?
So as long as we're living, we have breath. And the breath knows nothing about future or past or stories or narratives or roles or anything. It is simply a breath. A long breath is a long breath. As the Buddha said, a short breath is a short breath. And when we use the breath as a portal to now, right? It's so simple. You're never further the breath away from presence. So we just ride that breath, right? It's right here, right now. We ride that breath right into the center of now, always available. So that's why it's so powerful, because we can't be lost in something else, somewhere else, some other story, if our attention is on the breath. Neuroscience has shown us that attention can only be in one place at a time. Exactly. Multitasking is not actually, as you know, all over the place at the same time. It's from one to the next to the next. So if we're just conscious of bringing our attention to the breath and staying with the breath, there's only one place we can be, and that's right now.
And that is so powerful. When we return after the break, there'll be more with Nancy, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some other mindfulness techniques that she has in her great toolbox of resources in her book. We'll be back in just a moment.
Bringing a more conscious lifestyle to your world. OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Did you just look down at your phone? You did it again, didn't you? You know, you're flying down the road in a 3-ton hunk of steel, and a text takes your eyes off the road for an average of 5 seconds. At 55 miles per hour, that's long enough to travel the length of a football field and cause some serious damage. Turn it off. Trust me, whatever it is, you'll live.
Learn more at StopTextStopWrecks.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
I'm sorry, I have to chuckle because that was the perfect commercial.
I know. I was laughing too. Yes. Perfect.
It was the perfect commercial. I know. Everything's in alignment. So if you're just tuning in, we're talking about Nancy Colier's new book, The Power of Off, The Mindful Way to Stay Sane in a Virtual World. So Nancy, I'm sure people can find your book on Amazon and probably at Barnes & Noble. Can they also get it from a website or find out more about you from a website?
Sure, yes. The book is available everywhere books are sold, and my website is nancycolier.com, and it's 1L. And I have, lots and lots of information about this on there, and I also work with people individually on their own addictions and on all sorts of things. But I think the most important thing that you were just saying that I wanted to come back to, right, is at the center of all of it is building a relationship with yourself where you can tolerate your own company. And so I just wanted to finish too, when we ride the breath into now, the only place we can really be with ourselves is in now. We can't be with ourselves if we're lost in a story, a thought pattern, or whatever it is, or inside a game of Candy Crush. We come back to now to actually experience ourselves.
Yeah,
so that's why
absolutely.
It's so important.
It is so, so important. And it's interesting because I think that has been the epidemic dis-ease within humanity, is that aversion of connecting with self, which is why people, they don't want to feel, we've been taught, don't feel your emotions, stay away, run from them. And so that's why people will shy away from meditation, because once you start to become present in the moment, those emotions that you haven't wanted to look at start to come up to the surface because they're ready to move through you. Emotions are energy in motion, and it's meant to move. It's meant to be released, not held onto and denied with medication or with willpower. So it's interesting.
That's absolutely.
The thing we don't want to do is our doorway to health.
Exactly. It's actually it's paradoxical. It's the very thing to lean into the places that scare us. But we're conditioned from the time we're born, to stay away from what's painful, to it will overwhelm us, we'll never get out from it. And yet, when you have the courage, because it takes a tremendous amount of courage to sit down with yourself in silence, and when you do, what you discover, blessedly, is that there is a space there that isn't all the emotions, that is wider and more spacious and more eternal, if you will. And so it can handle the emotions moving in and out and actually bring great compassion to them. But we're so taught from so young that essentially we won't survive the emotions because we are them. And then we discover we're not. They're there, they're arising, and we can be loving with them. Yeah. So that's a great discovery, but you have to kind of reach a certain level of this is not working. The system of what else, chasing refuge, chasing a better now, chasing a better moment, that has to run out of steam in order for you to stop the strategies and say, let me come home and see what's here, what I'm really trying to outrun. Because that's what a lot of people spend their lives trying to outrun themselves. And boy, is technology an ally for that impulse to outrun ourselves. We can now. Listen, you can get to 85 years old buried in one of several devices and shiny cases and apps and learning all sorts of stuff. You can outrun yourself. But some point in life, I think there starts to be a kind of, for lack of a better word, a kind of existential awakening that there's someone here that we're trying to avoid that's not okay.
Yeah, I agree. And it's also, as you've already alluded to, it's an addiction that is not only accepted, but also encouraged and also even mandated to such a degree, because it's almost as if you're socially ostracized if you don't know how to talk about the newest phone or the latest app, or, what do you mean you're not on Facebook? Get out of the dark ages and join the crowd.
Yep, you're a Luddite. You're a Luddite if you're not. If you make different choices. Although I will say, it's amazing. I'm a huge eavesdropper. I go out to lunch almost every day and just listen and take notes. I'm a sociologist, so that's what I listen for in a therapist. So if you were to tune into the percentage of what people are talking about now, what their conversations are actually made of, it's got to be at least 80% of the conversations are now about their technology. Hey, I got a new great app. Hey, the iPhone 7's coming out. What kind of case are you going to get? Or, I was looking in Wikipedia. Everything, the contents of what we're talking about is now technology. That's what we talk about. And I would say, though, that people are also now starting to say, hey, could we what happened with that friend of yours? Or wanting deeper connections and relationships where they realize they have to tune into what people are living besides their technology. People are starting to talk about this, which is so encouraging, that we're not going to build great friendships and deep connections by, first of all, by not honoring the importance of relationships, by showing up in person with our friends, by not putting the phone on the table. But also, we got to know about their lives. We can't just talk about technology, right? We've got to get to know the person who's using the technology. And this is starting to change. People are waking up to that.
Well, that's a beautiful thing, and I'm really glad to hear that. And I think part of that awakening is asking those different questions instead of following the herd. And because it really is a very empty space to be in, and very vulnerable when you allow technology to rule and govern your life instead of knowing that you are the master and the captain of your own ship. But
that's
that
right.
comes
and your
from knowing
attention.
Yourself. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and your attention, when you're addicted and full on drinking the Kool-Aid, your attention is always somewhere else. It's always something else is better. This moment is inherently then inadequate. Whatever's happening here is not enough because something else is more fabulous. We don't know what it is yet, but we never really award this moment with the dignity and with the attention that it deserves so that it can become joyful, so that it can become satisfying, right? Our attention is never with it. And then we wonder why we're feeling dissatisfied, And as you say, everyone's just sort of doing what other people are doing. But they're not really asking this question. That's what I hope to ask, and I hope is received through the book, is ask yourself, what aspects of technology are working for me and what aspects are not working for me? I have no sense of direction. I deeply appreciate a GPS because it's a lifesaver for me. But at the same time, I want to be very mindful that knowing the relationship between things. I want to know if I'm going north right now or where I'm headed to, how that's connected with where I am. I want to meet people along that journey, along that process. I know that thinking and figuring things out and the process of getting from here to where I'm going is deeply meaningful to me. So I have to come up personally with ways to use the GPS, but also to stay awake and curious about, well, how does this part of the country relate to this part where I'm coming from? Because what I'm seeing on the not-so-hopeful front is I'm seeing that our younger people, they know they can get answers to absolutely anything, and they're losing a little bit of the interest in how do things connect, though. If we don't know how they connect, we don't know what the meaning of them is. We don't really deeply comprehend them. We have all these sort of one-off, isolated answers, but no connection. And if you ask young people, well, do you have any interest in sort of knowing, how this relates to this? Or they often say, no, I know that's the answer to that. But there's something where we're diluting again, but what does it mean then if it's connected to nothing else? So we're building penthouses, but we don't have the basements. We don't have the buildings. So we really need to decide, how to use the parts that work for us, but also make sure we're still taking good care of what really nourishes us, which for me, in part, is thinking and figuring things out and connections between things, how they relate.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I mean, and a lot of it, and I have to apologize to educators, but I do think it starts even in our school system where children today are just being primarily taught to test versus taught to think. And that's a big disconnect, too, that it's almost priming generations to come to disassociate with wanting to step into their own knowing their own consciousness, their own thinking processes, because it's just about answering the questions that are without that association that you just so very well expressed, without the relationship part. So it's really fascinating. The meaning. It's so fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely.
So fascinating. Gosh, Nancy, I want to have you back on again because you're just wonderful and you have a wealth of knowledge.
I'd be delighted. I love to speak to people who get it.
Oh, I totally get it. And I tell you, your book is very timely, and it's something that we need at this point in space and time of all of humanity. I hope it gets translated into many different languages and goes around the world. If you're just tuning in, it's called The Power of Off, The Mindful Way to Stay Sane in a Virtual World. Her name is Nancy Colier, and it's Colier is how you spell her last name, and it's nancycolier.com if you want to connect with her. And she does take patients and works with them primarily to deal with technology addiction. Is that correct?
No, everything.
No.
Absolutely.
Oh, everything. Okay,
absolutely.
Everything.
Yep, right. Living in a virtual world.
Oh, that's so important. Nancy, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Be blessed and know that you are richly loved. Bye-bye for now.